Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to the next episode of Breaking into Breaking Bad. This is Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. Today we discuss Season 4, Episode 8, Hermanos. So a quick kind of recap of what happens in this episode, if you haven't seen it in a while. This episode provides some crucial backfilling of some story that we need to know to kind of help explain a few things. So critically, we get to know sort of the history behind Gus and the drug cartels. We get a little bit more of information about what happened when the Salamanca brothers attacked Hank and how, if we remember, he received a phone call last minute. Wasn't really sure what that was, but it warned him and put him on guard and potentially enabled him to mitigate what was going to be a pretty nasty assassination and turn it around. And we learned that Gus had something to do with that. We also learned that Gus originally had some kind of a partner and wanted to get in a kind of side business with the cartel. And we learned how that did not go down very well. We also get a glimpse into the continued breakdown of trust between Jesse and Walt and how things are continuing to deteriorate for them in a way that they think action has to be taken soon with regard to Gus, because they're not really sure what's happening there. And then finally, Hank the obsession is coming back and he's getting more and more interested. But because he's still very much disabled, he's reliant on other people to help him. And he tries to get Walt to put a tracker on Gus's car to try and get more information about Gus when the story that he tried to follow kind of started to break down that would have pinned Gus with the methamphetamine production in town. So anyway, Hank's getting frustrated, but he's getting desperate, and we know where that leads. So that's kind of what happens in this episode. The title is Hermanos. Cabes, you and I, we're kind of Hermanos, aren't we?
Yeah, kind of. I think we even have a third.
We have a third Hermano. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So where does this name come from, you think? Why name it this?
Yeah, so when it comes to the flashback in this episode, you see the origin of Gus and how he first got started in the meth business with his old business partner named Max, who we see tragically get shot from Hector, which we also see is the main reason why Gus has such a hatred towards Hector. And they were, since they were business partners, Max and Gus, that was the person that started Boyos Hermanos with him. So it seems pretty relevant.
As in maybe Gus and that guy are hermanos in a way?
In a way. Not actual hermanos, but very good amigos. Right.
Pollos Hermanos, right? It's the name of the restaurant that Gus starts with this guy who's kind of an hermanos. Of course, the Salamanca brothers, hermanos, are the nephews of Tio. And he plays a role. Actually, he's the one who does shoot Max, right?
Right.
So there's some old bad blood between those guys. So I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with Hermanos. But then, there's a way, I guess, that Jesse and Walt are kind of partners, hermanos, though we have described their relationship before much more in terms of sort of a father-son relationship. So maybe this is suggesting we look at that relationship in a different way. I don't know. Maybe something else.
I feel like it was centered mostly around Gus, just because it shows the origin of how he came about.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think that's right. Well, we'll suggest that that's good enough for now, and if something else comes to us, we'll mention it. But Anyway, okay. So episode 8, Hermanos. So it begins with Walt getting a cancer screening, and he's sitting next to another guy while are they hooked up to, their machines, or they're waiting for the doctor to bring them back their report. And I don't know about you, but it seemed to me like it wasn't Walt there, but that was Heisenberg in the chair, because the guy next to him is much more nervous, I guess, and he's like, "Well, I don't really know." This kind of obviously a newbie, whereas Walt,
right,
an old timer, done
Walt
this before.
just is showing that he is just not scared of death anymore at all, and he said that back a couple episodes back when he was talking to Hank, trying to get him out of his funk.
Yeah,
that he doesn't let fear affect him anymore, and so the thought of death is just not something that overpowers him anymore. Like, he was distracted during the whole thing. The guy was trying to open up to him about the other guy's fears, and he excuse me, I gotta take this phone call. Like, he just didn't care anymore.
That's right. Yeah, he doesn't care. I think there's another layer to what's going on in this scene where the guy next to him says, if you get cancer and you just have to deal with it. And he's looking for Walt to affirm that and be like, yep, you just gotta deal with it, but what the guy's saying is you have to be passive. When you get cancer, you just have to accept it and embrace it passively and hope for the best. And Walt says that's bullshit. He says, never give up control. Live life on your own terms. This seems crazy because you don't get to choose to have cancer or not have cancer, right? I mean, that is a thing that happens and you have to decide what to do with it. But I think Walt's saying, if I get cancer, it's not going to mean anything. It's not going to mean what you think it means. And Walt says he asks, who's in charge? He says, me. That's how I live my life. And, someone might say, well, who gets to decide if you get cancer? And I don't know, an answer someone could give is, well, God. Maybe God didn't give you cancer, but God allowed you to have cancer, right? Like we could think of things in that way, perhaps. And, it's not unusual for people to get angry at God if something bad happens like this. Like, why me? I think that's a pretty human response, but that's an acknowledgement that you're not in charge, right? That there's this divinity that's in charge that could have, made things go a different way. But he didn't, and they went this way. And what about it? What does that mean? And I think humans, we can really wrestle with those moments.
I think you kind of nailed it right there. The whole thing about being in charge. If you remember Walt season 1, season 2, he wasn't in charge of anything. He wasn't in charge of his schedule. Like, he got told what to do, where to go, what to eat for breakfast. He was always being told.
Veggie
bacon.
Veggie bacon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, when you I don't know, when you tame someone like that so much, that is meant, especially in his eyes, for so much more, he becomes so much, I don't want to say worse. In Walt's case, it is worse, but it turns into this other, well, I guess you could say personality, which is Heisenberg. And now he never wants to give up control because he's tasted it.
Right.
And now also he's in a situation right now where he doesn't have control. Doesn't have control of Jesse. Doesn't have control of the situation with his boss, with Gus. And he's angry. Yeah,
he's in control and he's not in control. I think it's important to try and understand how he understands himself, which is a person striving to control and not be controlled by other people.
Right.
And so when he says, I'm in control, me, that's how I live my life. In a way, he's saying, I'm God.
Yeah.
I don't bow down to anything else. And I'm reminded of the weird scene with the Dodge Charger that he drives out, into the parking lot and does donuts until he burns the engine up or the tires, and then he sets the thing on fire and watches it burn. That's an irrational thing to do. On one hand, it's wrong to do, maybe. But what he says there, he says, "I'm living life on my own terms." That's kind of what it looks like. It's like, if I want to create chaos and do something that you all think is irrational, I'm going to do it if I can, because I will. We have to. I don't know. We can ask: is Walt verging on like a narcissism that is sort of removing him from reality in a way? Or is he discovering some new depth of agency and a kind of stoic, he's learning to have a radical control of his own inward life. Maybe he can't stop himself from getting cancer, but he can not care about it. Mm-hmm. And he is there in the lobby. He certainly doesn't seem to care about it. If he gets it, he gets it. He says, one of these days they're going to say, yeah, it's back and it's all over, and he's just going to be like, okay. So I think it's important, that little scene, for what it reveals, and we'll just see how things kind of develop from there. But that's where Walt is now.
Yeah.
So the last episode, Hank had brought evidence to the DEA guys to show them how Gus is somehow connected with the Gale murder, and so they have probable cause to ask Gus to come in. He's not under arrest or anything like that, and I think they know he'll show up because he's been so, I don't know, willing to play along and be so nice, and
big advocate of the DEA.
Yeah, he's a big advocate of the DEA. That's right. But he consents to being recorded like it's a deposition, even though he has no reason to do that. They can't force him to do it, but he does it. And what's amazing to me is he stays in character the whole time. He never breaks. You never see him hesitate and say, oh, maybe I should get my lawyer, or anything like that would have ever raised their suspicion. So when they have him, like how in the world are you going to explain why your fingerprints are all over Gail Bedeker's apartment? How are you going to explain that? And he has this explanation, completely sells it to them. And because he never breaks character and gives them any reason to question, they buy it. And everyone says, well, Hank, no offense, it made sense, but I buy his story, so gotta hand it to Gus. He's talented.
Well, remember Gus told Walt when actually Walt saw Gus at the hospital when the second Salamanca brother was killed from Mike in the hospital. Gus told Walt that he hides in plain sight. So this is something that he's very accustomed to. He knows what to say, how to say it, how to be. And he obviously had that whole alibi ready. But he did break character a little bit at the very end when Hank asked him about if Gustavo Fring was his real name, because he couldn't find any history of him. And you could see his eyes kind of looked unprepared. He handled it, the question, but you could tell that wasn't necessarily something that he had, right out the holster.
Yeah. Well, the example he gave may have not been the best one, but it was a not unreasonable explanation that the Chilean government, after Pinochet and all of that, had been in shambles to a degree where they would not have been good at keeping records. And I don't know. It's an explanation. It's something. Okay, well, Gus seems to have bought himself some time, if nothing else.
Right.
We'll see. And Hank is going to resort to unconventional methods, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Jesse is still concerned about the Mexican girl that he met at the 12-step meetings, who had the kid. Who had was it a brother?
It's Angela and Brock, and it was
right.
Brock's cousin. That was the one that killed. Shoot, what was the name of the guy?
Combo.
He was the guy that killed Combo, and then that guy was killed by the two people, and it was the domino effect. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So Jesse has given her money before, and now he's using Saul. He's paying Saul probably a lot to give money to her. And we have to ask, why is he doing that? Does he feel guilty for somehow?
I think so. Yeah.
Can we say that Jesse had a direct cause in the death of, was it her nephew? I can't remember now.
Yeah, Brock's cousin. Yeah, I think he's finding a way to feel guilty, regardless if he had any say in it at all, because he could break it down. They were the main reason why they expanded the territory, why Combo was even in that area, why they even got involved with the whole thing.
But I mean, the kid was playing with fire to begin with. I mean,
of course, yeah. So I think it's a little bit guilt and a little bit, I want to help these people out. So the combination of that with all this money that he doesn't know how to spend because he's never really had that kind of money before, correlates to that.
Yeah, and we remember he's had a rough upbringing himself, where his parents, probably trying to help him and gave him so many chances, eventually had to kind of kick him out. I wonder, is he trying to sort of help a little kid who in his mind might be like him when he was a kid and trying to help avoid the fate that he's had? I don't know. Yeah. Does he just have affection for Angela? Does he want to date her or something? And it's very odd. Maybe it'll make more sense later on. All we can do here is just note it. Now we've seen Jesse, he's a softie. He's always got a soft spot for kids, especially, who kind of get caught in the crossfire of adults' decisions that are irresponsible. So it's not entirely out of character for him, but we just note it and move on. So,
right.
Meanwhile, Skylar is trying to figure out what to do with all the extra cash that she can't launder through the car wash. So we see her putting them in clothing storage bags and vacuum sealing them up. To me, that was kind of an admission of failure, that she doesn't have a system that she knows how to control to launder that money. In the end, she's doing like exactly what Walt was doing when he was storing the money in the walls or in the foundation or whatever. I mean, it's like, why have the car wash if they have to end up putting all the cash in bags anyway?
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what's going on there. So we'll just, again, kind of note it. And
it just ended up in the basement or underneath the floorboards, I guess. Right. Crawl space. Yeah.
So Hank gets Walt to drive him down to Pollos Hermanos, and he wants him to try and put this tracker on Gus's car because he's still convinced that Gus is involved, even though the DEA is not going to be pursuing any investigation with him. So we're seeing Hank kind of return to his old ways. And this was a very unhealthy pattern for Hank before. Remember, he neglected his life, he neglected his marriage, his health. It became an obsession. And so I'm a little worried for him now, seeing that behavior kind of coming back. But he puts Walt in a very awkward position because Walt is clearly worried about upsetting Gus. It's a delicate situation with Gus, where trust is just so broken down. And so when Walt is supposed to go and put this tracker on Gus's car, and he knows that Gus is a smart guy, he's probably got people watching him, he goes into the restaurant and tells Gus, I don't want to do this. And Gus tells him it's okay, do it. No, I'm pretty sure Gus is going to be able to handle it. But Walt's clearly disturbed. He seems very scared in that moment that Gus is going to explode at him and kill him or something. Say, look, I can't believe you did that. You're cooperating with the DEA. But Gus seems to still have it all under control. And of course, if he knows that he's going to be tracked, he's not going to drive critical places. He'll figure it out in a way that'll probably help exonerate him in a way. So, yeah,
I think Walt was half scared for his life and also half scared for Hank's life, because he knows now that Gus just not going to take too kind to a DEA agent on his trail.
He knows Right. And he knows that Gus is ruthless. I mean, Hank has never seen Gus
Right.
slit someone's throat, with a box cutter. And Walt has. So Walt knows that Gus is ruthless.
Right.
And Hank will forgive him if he's a little naive, because Gus has gone to great lengths to make Hank and all the other guys think he's this, quiet,
he was also
unassuming manager.
Walt was also in shock because up until right before they pulled into the parking lot, he thought he was going to some mineral show with Hank.
Right. Yeah, and we still don't really have a good explanation for the mineral thing. I mean, that makes me think, maybe it was all a cover for his obsession with something else. But I don't think so. Why would Hank?
I think it was just an avenue that he could go to when he was in his weird funk. But he used it just recently now to kind of get out of the house. Because he didn't want to run this by Marie either. He wants to do this solo. And so when he had Walt, was driving, pull into the parking lot and basically spill the beans on what his theory is. And then you see Mike drive through, park on the other side of him, and Walt sees him. Walt was just in shock and he didn't know what to do. Right. So it was, put him in a weird situation,
to say the least. Okay. So a little bit later, Jesse and Walt are at Jesse's house, and Walt's clearly upset and trying to figure out what they're going to do. And he still wants Jesse to find a way to try and kill Gus or find a vulnerability with Gus somehow. And Jesse has to run to the bathroom. And while he's away, he gets a text message from Gus. Walt sees it. Walt puts the phone back and then pretends that he didn't see it. And he tells Jesse, you got a phone call or something. And it tells me that trust is really breaking down between the two of them, because Walt doesn't trust Jesse. He could have said, hey, I saw your phone and you got a text from Gus. He is testing Jesse to see if he'll tell him. So because he doesn't trust him.
Right.
And it turns out he had good reason not to trust him, because Jesse pretends that, doesn't mention anything. And so he denies it to Walt. So now, for whatever reason, Jesse didn't trust Walt to be able to tell him. So I think this was all part of Gus's 3D chess move a couple episodes back, when he tries to bring Jesse with Mike into the bodyguard position instead of being the lab assistant. He's really being successful at driving that wedge between the two of them, and potentially really dangerous. And we know it already has had an effect, because Walt wanted to recover Jesse and get him to poison Gus, and Jesse has the opportunity to, and he doesn't. He hesitates and doesn't do it. And we don't know if it's because he got scared or if his loyalty is starting to shake a little bit toward away from Walt and toward Gus and Mike. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just noting that as an interesting strategy that seems to be playing out. So then the rest of the episode is this flashback in which we learn about this unfortunate episode between Gus and Hector. It's interesting seeing Hector, a younger man, as a gangster.
We also see the more of the cartel, the boss.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if that guy's still alive. It's obviously been a long time
but
ago.
You see Hector walking around normal.
Yeah. Right. And we learned that Gus and his Pollos Hermanos partner had an unconventional way of reaching out to the Don, I guess, to the boss man. And what did they do? They tried to sell a little bit of meth.
They didn't sell. They were giving them out as samples.
Yeah, right. Because they wouldn't want to sell, because that would be them intruding into the cartel's territory. So they're just giving away these samples in order to get the attention, so they can get an audience with the Don. And he's like, that's manipulation. And who do you think you are? And the scene that I was confused by was when they kill his partner. I don't know why they don't kill Gus. But right after that, the Don tells Gus, I know who you are. And he tells him, go back to making chicken. And so instead of killing him, He tells him to go back. But what did he mean by "I know who you are"?
I think, Gus is originally from Chile, and they don't go into it, but I gotta think that he knew Gus already. He was not aware of Max, and you would think that he would have just killed them both.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he saw some kind of future business opportunity with them that he wanted to keep open or what, but he also wanted to have that control over Gus. He wanted to have the fear installed into him by killing his partner, and he would hope that would put himself above Gus.
Yeah, as a way of controlling.
Right.
Well, when he says, "I know who you are, go back to making chicken," maybe he was saying, "I know who you are. You're not a gangster. You're just a chicken cook."
Right.
And that's a huge insult. And you might say, well, maybe Gus decides that he's going to show him. And hence there's more than just greed or a desire to get money in his meth empire. Maybe what he's doing, part of what Gus is doing, is showing that guy that he's more than just a chicken cook.
Right.
That he himself is also an equal, right? And we remember how it was kind of insulting, or not kind of, it was really insulting when Gus wants to meet with the cartel. And what do? They send their Mike to meet with him, which is to say, you're not equal to us. You don't get to just meet with us. You get to meet with our Mike instead. And so there's a big sort of honor culture here going on, where there's a denial of equality. Like, we don't deal with people who are beneath us. We only deal with equals, and you're not an equal.
Right.
The last detail here that I noticed, I don't know if you picked up on this, but so Gus goes and visits Hector in the nursing home. And of course, Hector can't talk. So he has to just listen to what Gus has to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Gus tells Hector, "Look at me," twice.
Yep.
And if you remember, after they kill Max, Hector tells Gus, or he says it to his partner, "Look at me." Or no, he says, "Look at him."
Yep.
Look at him, twice. He says it twice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't. It could be nothing, but it seems a little weird as a coincidence.
No, it's a really good. I'll just say, remember that scene.
Okay. So you might know something that's coming up, but I don't remember. So, well,
Yep.
Okay. So I think that's where we have to leave it for now. We're learning a lot. See what's going to happen in the next episode.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this
thanks.
episode, of course you enjoyed the episode. What was there not to enjoy?
Yep.
Please like, share, subscribe. All three of those really help us with this podcast. You can always find these episodes.
5 stars. 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars, please. You can find the episodes on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and you can follow and contact us on Twitter and Patreon at Breaking Into BB. We will see you next time as we break into another episode of Breaking Bad.